Hey guys, Puppy back in today with another episode of INTY Homebrew Spotlight. Today I'm going to feature not only the news and the recent happenings from the Intellivision Homebrew scene, but I'm also going to have a feature on a recent Collectorvision title, the classic arcade hit Exidy's Death Race. So without any further ado, let's carry on and get to the news.
Papa Pete, the old ass gamer. Papa Pete, the old ass gamer. If you haven't grown up by the age of 50, you don't have to.
Be sure to check out Intellivisioncollector.com for all your Intellivision collecting needs, whether it be ROMs for LTO Flash or Ultimate Flashback, the latest homebrew games available on the scene, or even games for the original 125, that's Intellivisioncollector.com. In the first bit of news, Michael Hayes, programmer of several homebrew releases such as Sane Game and Robots, Fubar, and X-Ray and Diligus, as well as the creator of the Vectron hack that just recently enabled me to play through a video where I challenged and beat all 99 levels of Vectron. You'll probably never see it again nor ever see it without that hack. But he's just created a new version, again, a hack version of Coleco's Mousetrap called, you guessed it, a better Mousetrap. In the game, Michael's added some of the missing features from the arcade version of the game, as well as fixed some of the most annoying parts of the game, such as that constant music while you're playing. Now, Michael is currently discussing a possible release with a homebrew publisher, so watch for a potential release in the near future. In the meantime, I hope to release a gameplay video of Michael's creation within the next couple weeks. Now, in the world of Electronite, the publisher of so many fantastic homebrew titles, which has seen its releases delayed over the past year due to board shortages caused by not only the pandemic but other non-pandemic reasons, they're continuing to get all the other parts of their physical packaging ready. The overlays, the manuals, the boxes, they're all in either ready or in the printing process for all their upcoming titles. The goal right now is to have several titles released for the October Portland Retro Gaming Expo, and I'm talking about games including Infiltrator, Robot Army, Cat Attack, The Pandora Incident, Star Mercenary, and maybe even Clax. So wait to see what happens next in the world of Electronite. Cote Gamers has just formally announced on Atari Age that they'll be publishing both a budget and a deluxe version of Carlos Madruga's Norseman, scheduled for a July 2022 release. It'll include the full color box, manual, cartridge package, along with some very special extras. You can check these out on Cote Gamers' website, where you can also pre-order both versions. If you'd like some more information on Norseman, check out my video on the game back in the INTY Homebrew Spotlight Episode 8. Now, Tanuki is also tracking interest in a new controller soon to be released for the Intellivision 1 and Intellivision 2 that's designed to be used horizontally, more in a fashion very similar to the modern day controllers. Now, interest in these controllers is hot, so make sure you get your reservations in on the Atari Age forum thread right away. You don't want to miss out on this one. Also, in a bit of Atari Age forum news, Blah Blah Woof Woof has teased that they'll have 5 games released in 2022. There's a sneak preview there of a box for a title called Fox's Quest. It'll be interesting to see what other 4 titles they have in store for us. As promised in the Intellivision Revolution newsletter over the past few months, physical copies of several titles are now back in stock in their store. Now available are the INTY Basic Showcase Volume 3, Unlucky Ponies Adventures, Antarctic Tales, Kniefelter, Heli, and the 2021 Intellivision Homebrew Awards Physical Game of the Year, Intellivania. Coming sometime in June 2022 are Carlos Madruga's Bank Panic, Nanochess's newest game, Castle of Death, as well as the first homebrew creation from the host of Brian's Man Cave, Brian Puddin himself, Keystone Cops. Along with the addition of the physical copies back in the Intellivision Revolution store, Intellivision Revolution and Rev still have their collaboration with David Harley and Intelligentvision, where several of the Intellivision Revolution and the Intelligentvision ROMs are available for sale on the Intelligentvision website. Links to the store, along with links to any other pages mentioned in this episode of INTY Homebrew Spotlight, will be available in the description below. Now, last but not least, although it was held way back in February, I'd like to once again congratulate the big winners in the 2021 Intellivision Homebrew Awards. That's Intellivania from Intellivision Revolution and The Sorrow of Gadlan Thur from Kai Magazine. With 2022 shaping up to be just as prolific for homebrew releases as 2021, planning for the 2022 awards is already underway. Organizer Carlos Madruga has proposed the possibility of creating nomination committees from experienced members of the Intellivision community, who would then select specific nominees for each of the current awards and possibly consider adding additional categories. Voting would then take place as in the past, with the entire community being able to vote via an online poll. Watch for further updates on the 2022 Intellivision Homebrew Awards on the Atari Age and Television forums in late summer or early fall. Now let's move on to our featured game today. Collectorvision's latest releases were back in early fall of 2021, and they very quickly sold out. I had to save a few pennies back then, so I picked up Goon Enough and I picked up Gorf upon their initial release, but I didn't pick up the third game at the time, and that's today's featured game, Death Race. Now all three Collectorvision titles were back in stock early in 2022, so thankfully I had a second chance to pick up this classic, albeit controversial arcade hit. So let's take a look at Death Race. Exidy released Death Race in 1976 as a follow-up and modification of their prior release, Destruction Derby, changing the targets of the game from running into other cars to running into gremlins. Created some controversy that the company hadn't really anticipated. The humanoid-looking gremlins were seen by the mainstream media as being too human-looking, and suddenly there was massive negative press against the arcade game, where the goal was to run down pedestrians. Negative or not, the publicity was a boon for Death Race as it became the 8th highest grossing arcade hit of 1976. It's often been rumored that Death Race was associated with the 1975 David Carradine cult classic Death Race 2000, but this has been denied by Exidy. I've been lucky enough to play the original Death Race arcade game at Fun Spot down in New Hampshire, and it really is quite an experience with the large CRT screen and the double steering wheel. There just aren't that many original versions and original arcade machines still in existence. The gameplay in Death Race is about as simple as it could be. You drive around an open playfield trying to run over as many gremlins as you possibly can within a set amount of time. In the Intellivision version, you steer left and right using the left and right side of the disc, and you accelerate using the side buttons. The car turns very fast. It takes quite a while to learn to control your turning because it's very easy to spin out of control. When you run over a gremlin, it also puts a cross on the playing field that becomes an obstacle for a few seconds. And it's very easy to get hung up on one and bounce around quite a bit. Practicing gives you better control, but the quick spin steering and bouncy obstacles are really pretty challenging. Like most games of the day, this was set up as a two-player game where you're basically just trying to run over more gremlins than your opponent. But you can also play it as one player. It's the same game, and you just try to run over as many gremlins as possible in the set time limit. The graphics in the classic version of Death Race for the Intellivision are just like the arcade version, very basic and just in black and white. The cars look like cars, and the gremlins run around look like little stick figures. The animation of you driving your car around as it rotates, and as well as of the gremlins when they're running around, it's decent given the age and the style of the game back at the time. The scoreboard at the top is just like you'd see in a standard Pong game, with the only difference being the timer that's there in the middle telling you how much time you have left. Let's talk a little bit more about graphics as we move on to the different variations of Death Race on the Intellivision. On the game to selection screen, you can choose 5 different lengths of play for the game. You can choose 20, 30, 40, 50, or 60 seconds. That's the max. There are also 3 different variations. I've already described to you the first variation, and that's classic. It's very simple. It's black and white. You drive around. If you run into a gremlin, it creates a cross on the screen. There's never any, like I say, variation from that. It's classic. It's the same as it was in the arcade. Now you can also play the game in color mode, which makes the cars and their appropriate scores either red or green. It also makes the gremlins and the crosses blue and the time counter orange. The gameplay is the same as the classic. The changes are completely and totally aesthetic. Now, the final version of the game plays upon the assumptions that were taken with the game back at the days of its initial release, where you're driving cars around running over pedestrians, and if you run them over, it wouldn't really be a pretty sight. It's the gore version. In the gore version, again, the changes are purely aesthetic. This version is the same as the color version, except instead of crosses popping in as an obstacle, a big blood smear replaces the victim. There's no denying the point of the game in this version. The music that plays during the title screens is fairly decent.
I'm fairly decent.
It's a short loop of about 3 verses that really does kind of go well with the nature of the game. As far as the game sounds themselves, basically there are only 3. There's the purr of the engine as you drive around the playfield. There's the sound, the bumping sound as you run into an obstacle. Finally, there's the whistling sound that happens when you run into one of the pedestrians. I suppose it's supposed to be a shriek when you hit a pedestrian, but to me it just sounds like a whistling noise, and it's the exact same in all 3 versions. Another thing that I noticed is there's a couple other pieces of music in the game. When you're playing the color version, at least at the very beginning, and when you're playing the gore version, there's some other music that builds the tension according to the nature of the game. And also, there's a small tune that plays when the game is finally over. So those couple little things, they do add a bit to the game. They're overwhelming by any stretch of the imagination, but they're kind of neat to have as additions. Overall, as far as the sounds go in this game, I'm going to use the same terminology that I've used for the other aspects of it. It's very basic. Collectorvision's physical release of Death Race got the full treatment. It's got a fully glossy color manual. It's got great very full color 2 overlays with it. And it also has a real glossy, great artwork flip top box. The one thing that I really like about the Collectorvision releases, they always come, if I get a picture of it here, with a piece of styrofoam that fills up the box and a slot cut out for the cartridge to fit into. And it's not made tight, so it's difficult to get the cartridge out. And actually, it's made quite a bit wider, so the cartridge can sit in there very nicely. And they always give you one packing peanut that you can just slide into the side that keeps it snug in there, so it doesn't move around, but it's still very easy to remove when you want to. It's a great idea, and it really does a lot to help and protect the box itself. I really think it's a fantastic idea, and I give real kudos on the packaging that Collectorvision put in at least all their last 3 releases. Now, even with that styrofoam in there, there's still lots of room for your manual and your overlays to go in. And basically, overall, I'm very impressed with the packaging and feel that the effort and care that Collectorvision has put into the packaging, it really, truly increases the collectability of the game. Death Race overall is a very, very simple game. It isn't the gameplay that makes it notorious. It's the controversy. It's the topic of the gameplay and, the thought of you going around running over pedestrians. The graphics are basic, the sound's basic, the gameplay's basic, and it isn't a game that I'm going to play a whole lot. It's not going to keep my attention very long. But I still wanted it. It's okay, because the other factors that Collectorvision put into this title, frankly, the notoriety of the title itself, it was a good choice to come to the Intellivision. Plus, it was simple. You could put it on the Intellivision quite easily, I would think. But, it's frankly one of the most controversial and notorious arcade hits from the last 50 years. Given all these pluses and minuses of this title right here, I'm going to give Exidy's Death Race by Collectorvision a 5 out of 10 rating. Thank you for joining me for today's episode of INTY Homebrew Spotlight. Make sure you join in again next month for more Intellivision Homebrew news and updates, as well as another feature on a title from the Intellivision Homebrew Library. Take care.
Papa Pete, the old ass gamer. Papa Pete, the old ass gamer. If you haven't grown up by the age.
Hey guys, this is Brian from Brian's Man Cave, and you're watching Papa Pete, the old ass gamer.
What the hell?